All right, I think we are live. Hello and welcome to Marketing Live. Marketing Live is part of a Higher Ed Live network, a series of professional development web shows and podcasts, which are always free and accessible to you in the archives of higheredlive.com and on iTunes. Be a part of our broadcast by tuning in live and sharing your insights and questions by using the hashtag HigherEdLive. You can receive weekly updates and live show dates and times by subscribing to the Higher Ed Live newsletter. Today's show would not be possible without the support of M. Stoner and FormStack. Higher Ed Live is produced by N. Stoner, a marketing and communications firm that works with education institutions on branding, strategy, web design, and more. FormStack is a robust online form building solution. With an intuitive drag-and-drop interface, the platform makes it easy for marketers to create branded, mobile-ready web forms without writing code. Build donation forms, contact forms, event registrations, and more with the web's only 508 compliant form builder. Publish your forms and use FormStack's social media plugins to maximize your traffic. With in-app analytics and partnerships with popular marketing tools, you can get even more out of your captured data. Visit www.formstack.com to learn more about the ways FormStack can double your response rates. So let's jump into our topic for today. New social media platforms are constantly emerging online, creating opportunities for us to communicate with our students in innovative ways. The challenge is knowing which platforms are beneficial for us to join in on and which ones are better to leave behind. Snapchat launched in 2011 and quickly rose to prominence in the digital world. With over 100 million active users and 71% of them under 25 years old, Snapchat presents a great opportunity to connect with our students. We would like to welcome our guest, Andy Howard, today. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you.
Andy is the Assistant Director of Rec Sports for Marketing Communications at the University of Florida. And if you don't follow him on Instagram, you definitely should. It's one of my favorite accounts to follow.
Thank you.
So if any of our viewers do have any questions for Andy, please make sure to tweet us using the hashtag HigherEdLive on Twitter. So let's jump in. So before we jump into Snapchat, can you tell us about what your department does and what social media and marketing you typically use?
Absolutely. At the University of Florida, the Department of Recreational Sports, we call it Rec Sports, is part of Student Affairs. And we serve the campus in fitness facilities, sports. We have a lake, which is located 8 miles south of our campus for recreational use. That's Lake Wahlberg. We have aquatics programs. And the university is over 50,000 students. And we serve close to 40,000 of those students every year that are engaged in our services. So we have a big chunk of student interaction. And despite the size of our department, we live with the motto, the world in motion, one gator at a time. And we really value those interpersonal one-on-one relationships. We're also a huge employer of UF students. We have over 700 students that are employed in our operations. And those are our channels for getting the relationships built. To market our services, especially on social media, we've been on Facebook. We have a LinkedIn account that we use to engage our alums. We've been on Instagram and we've been on Twitter. A lot of people within the recreational sports world have followed our summer photo challenges, which were covered in the Huffington Post and Miami Herald. For engaging students. Some people think of social media as the nemesis to exercise and recreation, and we've been really trying to use them in ways to engage peer-to-peer conversations about the importance and activity through example. So we've actually had a lot of luck with that so far. So we're poised and ready to explore any new platform that comes up, and we're ready to explore. We don't jump into it without doing some thought, but we are interested.
That's excellent. I can tell you right now, if my social media activity was indicative of my actual exercise activity, I would be so buff.
And that's the way students communicate. I mean, it's empowering. People want to see someone they know encouraging them, and so it's finding ways to trigger that. It's not virality where they're sharing our content. What we want them to do is share their own content and kind of guide them on this path where they're peer leading. You know, they're forming teams and participating in sports. Even we live in a particular region with a lot of outdoor activities, and you start to see a lot of these resources unfold through visual tools, through particularly Instagram, but also Twitter and Facebook. There, you can even talk to some areas. There's some local springs nearby that for years were fairly unknown, other than people who were scuba divers perhaps are going to get certifications, and now they're kind of on every student's bucket list. For instance, Devil's Den, it's a cave spring in Williston, only 20 minutes from here, and because of Instagram and Twitter, now their tourism is just blown up because people see those pictures and they want to go. They realize how close it is to, you know, their residence hall or their apartment here in Gainesville, and they're so accessible. So same thing with us. We want people to actually envision how people are using these services that we're offering, and also the value. So whether or not they're using our services or not, we're here to promote certain level of values to the students at the University of Florida and really help set them off into a life of healthy decisions and fully exploiting the resources available to them to stay healthy and active and in motion.
Excellent. I love that. So now, one of the things that I love about our topic today is that it is so controversial. And already on Facebook, a shout out to Alex Williams. He's had some really good comments on Facebook and good feedback about, you know, what he does and doesn't like about Snapchat and the options there. And so let me dive into his points. Let me see. All right, so Alex had a great comment where it said, you know, he's all about for innovation in higher ed, friending students on Facebook, following folks on Twitter. But Snapchat, it's an app that deletes your sent/received pics after viewing it. It's literally designed for privacy, not communication between an institution and students. I feel like an old curmudgeon, I'm not going to say that right, between an feel like an old curmudgeon saying this, but Snapchat is one app I want to steer way clear of when it comes to my professional life and responsibilities. What's next? Tinder and higher ed. And I'd like to say I would love to date the University of Florida. I don't know about Alex, but
well, University of Florida is Bay. We have established that. But so to Alex and to others, there's a lot of people like him. Let's talk about the way Snapchat started. Was on this idea of impermanence. So things that you would post that wouldn't be there forever. And you can imagine, and we probably all know about a lot of the content that it was cultivating in its early days. A lot of risque type of photos sent from one person to another. So that was kind of the beginning of it. But with the amount of the population that has come on board now, people have found a lot of different ways to use the brand. And another thing, when you use it, there are two different features. One is the tool to be able to communicate with people who you're contacts with. And so that goes directly to your contact, and it, in theory, could be up to 10 seconds long, and they can watch it one time, and then it's gone forever, in theory. There's also now a stories section. And you can, with proper settings, like Rec Sports has open settings, so anybody can follow our story without us having to follow them back. So we don't have to friend students on Snapchat in order to share content with them. And we are able to post information onto our stories, and students can receive that as push information. It's different than Twitter or Facebook, which are kind of RSS feed-based. You know, it's very viscous. You log on and you see what news. There might be algorithms involved, but mostly it's just this moving feed of what the latest stuff going on is. And if someone hasn't been on in a couple days, then it pushes away. You just missed that message. So some number of people who are following us on Facebook and on, well, for instance, Rec Sports. Our Rec Sports account has over 10,000 followers on our Facebook page. But our posts many times will receive maybe 200 views. They're really encouraging us to sponsor and pay for that ads. We do that often to increase the number of views, but just an organic post might receive as few as a couple hundred posts. So what good is it to have 10,000 people following you if they're not engaging with your content? On the other hand, Snapchat almost acts more like email or a text message in that it tells the person who's following you they have an unread message. And it doesn't have a feed, it doesn't go on, and there's this obsessiveness about, I'm guilty of it, and most students I talk to are too, that when you've got something there that says it's unread, you want to sit there and read them all until they're unread. So you tend to consume this content at a greater rate, and they watch your stories. It's sequential in format. So different than Vine, similar to Vine and Instagram's video feature, except that it creates all of your content falls into sequence, and each clip is up to 10 seconds. So it can be text or finger drawing or video or photo or interviews, and you build this string of content that ends up being consumed in sequence. So they watch it from beginning to end, which would be like somehow stringing a bunch of Vine videos together would change the narrative without having to go to a different Vine video every time. So there's some entertainment features there. Timing is everything. Deciding like how much attention and sometimes 10 seconds is way too long. Deciding how to time your content appropriately. And the way we got started, and the way I'd suggest anyone else do due diligence, is to follow some brands that are doing it and see what they're doing, draw the good, the bad, the ugly, and then think about what your own organization's personality is. So I'll give you two examples. NPR is using a Snapchat. Their account is NPR News, and every day they post one clip up to 10 seconds, which is just a reporter's face with a quick blip of news fact about global warming, about violence or news, any kind of news topic, 10 seconds, and they end with their name, NPR News. You know, the penguins are being affected every day by global warming. Andy Howard, NPR News. That's it. It's a very different voice. It's a very different voice than Taco Bell or Starbucks, or even there's another news outlet called Now This News, and that's their handle on Snapchat. And they hand draw. A lot of pins we receive have an end to them. I don't have one here with me, but there's a stylus on the other end of the pin. That little squishy thing is actually so that you can draw on your phone or draw on an iPad. And there are people who are Snapchat artists who are using the art tool to draw and illustrate on the form information. So this news account every day publishes anywhere from maybe 5 to 10 screens in sequence again that tell you the news from the last 24 hours. And so every morning within a minute I can consume the news that it would take me quite a while to even devour on my Facebook feed. And then you can kind of choose to dig deeper into things that you want. Taco Bell, it's all about their brand personality. It's very fun. It's tongue-in-cheek. Starbucks, they've had some really cool promotions. One of my favorites was inviting you to misspell your own name on a coffee cup and kind of take something that they're known for doing, their customer service, and have made it actually something lovable and fun about that brand, and allowed the customers to interact in that way. People are doing contests, people are collecting feedback, and so before anybody jumps in, you should explore it first. Whether you have your own account, understand the tools, follow some people who are doing it right, follow people who aren't doing it right, and if you're the creative type, those ideas are going to start following once you understand how the form works. It's hard for some of us to visualize how Vine or how Instagram was going to work, and then it changed. Instagram added the video feature, which changed the whole game. And but those of us who didn't jump in right away and took the time to understand the form, and the whole advertising format changes because of the new medium.
And I really loved your point about Facebook and Twitter, and I mean, I work for the University of Virginia, and one of the challenges that we've been talking about in across the entire university is that if you want any of your posts to be seen, you have to pay for them, and what a pain to have to do that. I mean, our bill for last month just for career services was over $300 because we want to communicate and connect with these students, and this is what we're having to do. And And the idea of not having to wait for the algorithm to filter your information, that your students are essentially pinged or alerted that you're trying to communicate with them, what a powerful tool. And making sure that we're using it right, and that we're not, I mean, if I got pinged by a person every 10 minutes, I would stop paying attention to them. So I think that's absolutely brilliant, really good points. And I love your, what was it, the Snapchat artist position. Who knew, the positions and jobs that are showing up.
Absolutely. Well, and what you do see on the back end when you post content, it shows you how many views each content received, and it also gives you a list of the screen names of every person who viewed the content. And you can also, let's say I have a sequential message that might have 10 frames, I can see the viewers for every frame. And I'll tell you, there is a slight diminishing, people who start that don't stop, but it's within 10. And we're getting over 300 interactions every time I post something, 300 people seeing these posts, and they take me a couple minutes in my office to do. When it comes to assessing them, it's also sometimes not, but some of the major brands have had a hard time deciding. I'm not talking about higher ed, I'm talking about corporate brands have had a hard time deciding whether to tackle Snapchat or not. And people have just jumped in to explore it, others have avoided it, and I don't know that it's really designed to bring the kind of click-through rates and things that we see on some of the other platforms. So the way I compare it, part of my job in marketing is also outreach. And if a group of 300 students invited me to come speak and get 2 minutes at the beginning of their meeting to say whatever I wanted to say about our upcoming events, would you go do that? Of course I'd go. 300 students is huge. So the opportunity for me to do that in my office without an invitation, anytime I want to, and we can have fun with promotions. I've been able to give visual tours of things that are easier to see than they are to be talked about. So particular fitness equipment, for instance, or sports that are not as common as, say, football. We play goal ball, can jam. There's a lot of events we have that people don't have. They need to put a face with a name. And sometimes we have open houses. We have registration. Our open house events typically can handle like 30 students at a time in some of our fitness areas. I had 300 students I was able to take on a tour through the back end of our personal training studio and show them different options we were offering in small group training, whether it was TRX or power plate or kinesis. And these things aren't on our main floor for every student to use. These are things that are auxiliary. They've been paid for through personal training fees and small group training fees. And so they're services students have to pay for too. So a lot of students don't get behind that door to see what's going on and what the advantages of those services are. And I'm able to go back there and show them real photos. Our lake has dozens of activities. Most people never leave the chair on the beach because they don't realize you can check out a mountain bike and go on our mountain bike trails. We have climbing walls. There's 2 parks. There's actually 2 separate parks on different sides of the lake. And so if you're kind of in your routine of going to North Park and weren't aware that we even had South Park, I can take you on that tour. I can show you from your residence hall room what it's like. I can interview students. I can interview alums. It gives a lot of advantages that I see more akin to outreach and tours, maybe sometimes more so than competing with other forms of social media. It's a very effective way to do a presentation.
That's such a brilliant idea. I mean, I can see, housing, for example. You have students that are coming in for orientation. They want to know what the rooms look like. You could alert them there and say, here's quick little tours of some of these rooms. Dining, here's what the special is in this dining hall today.
Absolutely.
In career services, this is where you can do on-grounds interviewing. Or here's an example of a or here's a resume tip, or things like that. So there really are tons of possibilities. What a brilliant concept. So going back to it, we talked a little bit about what Snapchat is, why you would want to use it, and doing some research beforehand, which I love. Mm-hmm. So what kind of content do you think that we should include, and what are some best practices for getting some of that content? Because we don't want to Snapchat them, message them every 10 minutes. So, I mean, should we include events, or is it only like a couple of events? Or so where should we start?
So, number one rule is to know your personality and know your brand's personality and stay within that. I mean, that kind of should lead most marketers into the type of content you should or shouldn't be doing. Um, and secondly, universally, just a pet peeve of mine, the stories, once you're posted, they last 24 hours unless you remove them. You can take them down if you'd like, but they last for 24 hours. So I don't think that there is any magic number. It's about relevance. So you could post every day as long as people enjoy your content and aren't annoyed by it. If you don't have anything good to post, don't post it. But do realize that if you post within the 24-hour period, the sequential format is best served when they start to watch it. They literally hold their phone on their thumb on the screen, and as long as their thumb is on the screen, it just goes through your sequence. It could be up to 2 minutes long or however long you choose to make it, but it, to me, seems best served when it stays on a topic. So if in the same 24-hour period you were to post two different things, it kind of starts getting cloudy when they're watching this clip and it's all about deadline to register for Dodgeball League is tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. and then it goes into some quippy funny thing that, skit that we create in the office to promote fitness or just a general brand reputation thing. So I do try to limit it to once every 24 hours, and that's doesn't mean the calendar day. It means 24 hours. So if I post it at noon on Tuesday, that content's still there until noon on Wednesday, and then it's free to post something else. Otherwise, students who engage in it, your storyboard might get a little messed up. It's like watching half of Mary Poppins and then going into Peter Pan. It could get a little confusing, so you got to kind of keep that separate. You do have there's been a couple times when we have a deadline that might be within 24 hours. So today it's noon, the event closes at 5 o'clock today, and so I'm asking people to make sure to register before 5. 6 o'clock, that message is irrelevant. So you can go back on and remove that post, and then it's no longer out there, because otherwise students will continue to interact with it. If it's in the story, it shows up at first on the top as an unread message. Once they've watched it, though, it goes to the bottom in alphabetical order under your account name where they can watch it as many times as they want to within 24 hours. And so if they miss something, they can still go back and read it. Most students know this. They know how to use it. We have to figure out how they're using it to best serve them or understand that this doesn't disappear. They can get to it. The students know they're competent in this. As a matter of fact, there was a recent statistic that 77% of American college students were using Snapchat. That is a pretty powerful number and a pretty important rationale for us to at least warrant investigation on how we can use it for our good causes.
Oh my goodness, 77%. And I also have to give a great shout out for the Disney reference. For those who don't know, Andy and I both used to work at Disney, separate departments and separate times, but the cast members are strong here. So
cast members for life.
Well, that's such a great point. So what are some best practices for design and getting the content together? I mean, you talked a little bit about, making sure it's engaging, it's what our students want. I mean, how do we start putting stuff together?
So this is part of the proprietary section, I guess, where people have to decide what's best for them. I've tried everything from you can buy an attachment for a tripod that holds in my case, an iPhone. And so I could station it in front of a marker board and do kinetic text. So I would draw, take a photo, draw, take a photo, draw, take a photo, and in 1-second clips, you actually see the drawing come to life, and it ends up being an announcement about an upcoming sport league or a aquatics opportunity. We have done things where you can actually physically print or take screenshots. There are apps that support the Snapchat at the moment does not allow you to select material or content from your camera roll on your phone. So it's at the moment live content. So you post, you take the photo and it posts. That presents a challenge if you storyboard something that would require multiple locations. So if I was going to do a campus tour and do it on the Snapchat, it would be hard to post them all within 5 minutes of each other so that the story would truly run in sequence. I would end up running around campus, taking a photo here and there, and posting them as they were live. So that story would unfold over an hour or something, and it would lose its entertainment value. Some brands have gotten around that with, there's apps out there such as SnapUp is one of them that helps you upload content. There's controversy about Snapchat's user agreements, and in part that has dealt with people harvesting content too. That again, if someone sends you a personal message that's not supposed to be saved, apps have been developed where people can save them. It's not, in fact, impermanent any longer. That's been part of the controversy. It really doesn't affect brands. I'd love it if they want to save all my content. Go ahead. Hang it in your dorm if you'd like to. Whatever you want to do, that's great. But we have to be cautious of what tools we decide to use. You can Red Bull this week was doing some promotions for snowboarding, and they actually select celebrities within the snowboarding field, that do a Snapchat takeover, and they take over the Red Bull account for that day and do a day in the life of that athlete. Similarly, MTV has Snapchat, and they have had artists that have taken over the Snapchat. There are several, like we had for Vine and Instagram, there are now Snapchat celebrities, people who would otherwise not be famous at all, who have these huge followings and huge market power, especially with younger audiences. And some of them, Jerome Jarre in particular, I've noticed he's gone a lot of kind of Kickstarter-esque missions. Like he was in the Philippines showing firsthand how people were innovating these tools out of recycled materials to bring lights to villages. And all these kids are having these opportunity to see this story and see firsthand the impact it's making. And I would bet that there's going to be some follow-up on opportunities to give and get involved in that, because you're able to show things in a different, more passionate way than you would in an email or a pamphlet or even Facebook at this point. Even Facebook has a video feature, but there's no guarantee that they're going to click and watch it or watch the whole thing. Whereas, again, that you've got that inbox feel, like you have a message waiting for you. You're following UF Sports, and we've sent you a message, it's waiting on you, and then they open it. The moment you become irrelevant, or you lose the value, or you lose your entertainment value, or the informational value, whatever caused them to sign up, when you lose that, they unsubscribe. So they would end up just not getting them at all. That's just how the students are working on this device.
So we have a good question coming from Alex, and I'm curious about this as well. So when my institution tweets, and I can tweet back, on Snapchat, are you looking for students to respond to your Snap posts, or is it more of a one-way form? And one of the things, so along with what Alex is saying, is one of the things that I love about Facebook or Instagram or Twitter is that our credibility is increased when we get likes or when we get shares, and and that's how we measure that engagement. So can people respond to us on Snapchat?
Yeah, so there's a number of ways to respond to this question. So first of all, there are direct messages. There's also now a feature to direct text message somebody. So it doesn't have to have a picture or content. It shows up almost like a little chat box. And similarly, the content is impermanent. But I've gotten all kinds of direct questions, sometimes a clarifying point about something I posted. We did a report to student government this year. They'd asked 4 of the major funding departments to report mid-year on what we've done together as a kind of educational piece. And the director was only given about 15 minutes to talk. So I supplemented instead of handing out something unsustainable, I did a Snapchat annual report that actually showed them facts, statistics, showed them places and buildings we built together. And that was also not just the student government, the whole rest of our following could see that too. And there were people who were asking questions. One of the things we had revamped was our guest procedure, bringing guests to the gym facilities. And so someone wrote in and said, how much does the guest pass cost? How do I get it? And I'm able to respond to that student. And it's not done in a way that's in the sphere like Twitter. So not everyone else can see the conversation. So that is part of it. They directly ask me a question, I directly answer them. They could also opt to post content that they share with their stories, or they share with multiple friends. So if and there's no way for me to know if they did or didn't, or how many friends are following them without asking. But I see an awful lot of content using our services, or even talking to us in the stories, meaning that all their friends are seeing it too. So there's someone who's going to Southwest, and that's our Southwest recreational facility, and they're filming themselves on their way in saying, I'm going in to Southwest, here I am, Snapchat, thanks UF Rec Sports for reminding me I need to get my workout today. And meanwhile, all their other friends saw that. So it's a different type of virality that people do see content, and that comes from getting them there. If the students are at Lake Wahlberg, they are snapping, they're tweeting, they're snapping, and their friends are seeing it. It might not be as widely public as something like Twitter, but again, the most powerful relationships are from the people that you know, not always from the strangers. So what's important is that if they have, anywhere from 5 to 100 other student peers that are following them, they're seeing this content, and students are much more aware now of what resources are available to them, not just in my department, but throughout our entire campus now, because you're able to live your entire life at 100%, and maybe 5% of everybody else's life too, from what you consume through our media together.
That's excellent. I have to tell everybody that I do live vicariously through Andy and his Instagram page. I have snorkeled and done wonderful things with Andy on his Instagram page.
It's Florida JAH. If anyone wants to follow along, it's Florida JAH on Instagram. And I appreciate that feedback. It's been a pleasure having you on my journey.
Oh my goodness, everyone should follow. I look at his pictures and I'm up here in the snow and it's cold and I'm like, oh, snorkeling. Florida. Look at the palm trees in the sunset. Meanwhile, I have like this sad fat basset hounds that are looking at me like it's so cold. They don't really get the whole Instagram thing yet. I'm explaining it. It doesn't work. So, one of the things you talked about before, which I love, was the contests and how what was it? Starbucks did contests with a cup. So what are some ideas for promotions and tactics with Snapchat? Like, how would we even go about doing that?
So there are a number of ways, and again, this goes back to the brand's interpretation of the Snapchat user guidelines. Because some of the earliest contests that I saw, I wasn't quite sure how you could do them with the tools that Snapchat provides. In fact, they would have been impossible. For instance, if you screenshot something on, for instance, an Apple device, you can screenshot, and then they would have you repost and interact with that in some way. So, for instance, if the Starbucks account would have said, screenshot this picture of an empty cup, and then you write your own name and repost it to us, that actually is impossible on current Snapchat features. You can't select something from your camera roll. So you'd have to either use a third-party app, which is controversial as far as the usage agreement goes, or you would have to have them send it to a different mechanism, like post it on Twitter. So they could bring in content on from Snapchat, but then move it to be curated onto Twitter, or to not to Facebook, but Twitter or Instagram. Facebook has a lot more strict contest policies, and if you're not aware, you should read up on them on all of these platforms before you start contests. Some of the other things that I've seen that were really interesting were like drawing contests. There's a finger drawing tool. You can use your stylus or your finger. So one was Groupon. Groupon.com is their Snapchat account name, and they did a contest when it was starting to get the big cold storms are coming in, the snowstorms. And so most of the United States was impacted by that. And they had you take a selfie, but then finger draw completely around you to envision yourself someplace warmer and send it back. And that was something you could organically do with the Snapchat tools. You can take a selfie. You can draw I took a picture of my dog, and I put him in an ocean with a little life preserver around him, and an island in the background, and a shark fin coming up from the side. And I sent it in, and I got refeatured. They screenshotted and used it. And but I did not win. Unfortunately, did not win the contest. I think it was for something warm, like a cruise or something like that.
The water could be warm. I feel like that's a jib.
Again, going back to following brands, you'll see a lot of innovative. There was one this week I saw, which was new to me. It's just so simple. But whenever someone screenshots, so again, back to impermanence. So this agreement that's you and your friends, when it was the original Snapchat, all I could do is send something to somebody I knew, and it was supposed to disappear. Well, then iPhones come out with this ability to screenshot. So you send someone this picture, whether it's, we'll just pretend it's something pleasant, like your grandmother blowing out her birthday cake or something, and they screenshot it, and so it sends a message back to the person who sent it originally, said it's been screenshot. So imagine it in a less ideal circumstance where the content maybe was less than ideal, maybe risque. If you were stupid enough to send it to them and they screenshotted it, at least you got notice that your content had been captured, and it kind of had some effect on keeping things honest. It's not a perfect system, but so that it still exists. And sometimes I post content that has details like a web address, and people will screenshot it, and then they have access, and I can see how many people viewed it, who viewed it, and how many people screenshotted it, and who screenshotted it when I see my report on who saw that content. So the other day, I think it was Sour Patch Kids, and Sour Patch Kids had posted a contest, and it was different flavors, and you screenshotted your favorite one, and they would count how many. It tells you in the analytics how many people screenshotted it, and they would announce who was the winning Sour Patch Kid based on this voting mechanism that they created. They invented this way to use existing technology to create a voting mechanism. It was really pretty clever.
Idea.
Rec Sports was a great organization on our campus to be a first mover because we're allowed to be a little tongue-in-cheek. You know, I joke that with our clientele, it's not appropriate. It would not. We're all about every student having access to these services, and we fight sometimes stereotypes that it's only students that are in shape or Greek life, and that's not a reality. And we do our best to distill those myths. And so I've noticed an entertainment paradigm where I can, it would be totally inappropriate to make fun of people who did not go to the gym. But whenever with a certain realm of self-awareness within sarcasm, that you can make fun of ourselves, and everyone thinks it's funny. People who go to yoga, people who go to yoga think a good yoga joke is funny. Like, that's so me.
Yeah.
You know, if you're like, oh, namaste, or some joke about being a yogi life, and yogis get that. Within a certain, you can't go too far. Well, there's a certain, your audience. I tell everyone, you have the friend who doesn't know when sarcasm becomes not funny. And it's your institution's job to know that the person who's managing your account knows that line. Like, knows how to create content that's just the right kind of entertainment, that's entertaining without crossing that line. But it's allowed us to not take ourselves so seriously, so that the outside world, people who were intimidated before, realize even some of the people who look intimidating aren't intimidating. They're nice. They want to help you. They've created this path for themselves, and they want to share this with other people also. And it really helps us take the edge off of it. But it is one of those things that you can teach some of it, but otherwise it's casting. Finding your right entertainer to be managing your accounts who can find that line and create relevant content without crossing the line and going too far.
Well, and throwing this out there for all the Gators, I was not in shape, and I was old, and I wasn't in Greek life, and I went to rec sports. So
holla.
We have a great question from Kenna Corley on Twitter. Where do you see your back-end analytics for Snapchat?
When you go to the store, when you view your story, where you go to see all the stories that are posted for you to view, on the very top, if you have content posted, so that's the one thing, is it's available while the content is live. So once the content is gone, after the 24 hours have expired, so do the analytics. So as a manager, when you post a story, you can go and see in live time how many people and who has seen that post. Once the post is gone, the analytics go with it. So as a manager, I have to remind myself to check in 23 hours later along the way to kind of have a good idea of where it started. I'm still at the phase where I like to check in all the time and see what my curve is, basically. Are people, and there are people who, as I'm posting live, if I'm doing something more complex that has maybe 10 slides that go with it, or 10, whether they're video or drawings, whatever, then by the time I've gotten to the 10th, I've already had 15 people watch the first, second, third. And so there's people who kind of start watching it while you're posting it. So that's kind of the challenge, is keeping them engaged. I think that probably answered that question. We've also are lucky enough to have a lot of emojis that are appropriate for us. So a lot of the sports help me save characters when I type something on the screen. Just something simple and less creative. I can use the basketball emoji and say finger draw 5v5, and then have on there register by Friday at 5, and leave it there for 6 seconds, maybe not even 10 seconds, 6 seconds, and then all the students who follow us get the message. 5-on-5 basketball registration closes this week, and it's a just really quick and easy way to make a quick announcement and get the word out. And one more way, we had Midnight Fun Run as an annual 5K race that we'd start at midnight on the last day of classes before final exams. In part, that event is to deter drinking and other types of celebrating. It's also to help reinforce the idea that exercise should be part of your readiness for finals and academic success. You know, if you're read the book Spark. There's a great book called Spark: The New Science of Exercise in the Brain. But we did a early registration, 24 hours only, which was on February 15th. And we registered 1,500 students within 24 hours. And everything I did that day, you would see another 100 students ramp up. So unfortunately, it wasn't the kind of day where I could just execute my marketing plan and sit back and wait, when I realized that on social media, every time I posted a new comment, every time I posted a new Snapchat, every time we even commented on Yik Yak that day to remind people. It was also a student government election going on campus, and James Franco was on our campus.
Oh
so
my
there was
goodness.
a lot of Yik Yak happening about election results and about James Franco, and I was right there in the middle of it reminding them about our upcoming event. Even in some cases I posed questions. I'd say, you know, when is Midnight Fun Run? I know when Midnight Fun Run is, but I just wanted to see. And the number of students who would respond and answer the question for me was terrific, to see like how popular it really was amongst other students just by posing a question out there and seeing how they'd respond. But every time I posted something, another 100 students would register for the event. So it really kept me up till midnight, literally, because I knew every time I post something new, I would have to delete the old one and post a new one. So if I posted a Snapchat that would say, you know, less than 2 hours left for registration, an hour later I was deleting it and starting another one that says less than an hour before registration closed. And when registration closed, I deleted everything that talked about upcoming registration deadline and changed the message to, we just registered 1,500 students for Midnight Fun Run. And regular registration will open March 23rd. So you have to stay on top of it.
That is absolutely fantastic. So let's dive into campus stories. I think you talked a little bit about that before. So
yeah.
What is the campus stories feature that Snapchat launched, and how does it work?
So I've talked a little bit about the stories, and then now they've created a couple different versions of stories that are collaborative in nature. So some of them are curated, some of them I'm under the impression people are paying for. So for instance, there was a hot air balloon festival, and they decided to make a story about that. A lot of the EDM festivals, music festivals that are really popular with college students have done it. So what happens is when you're in that geographic, they set up a geographic wall basically, And when you're inside that wall, you can choose to, when you go to publish your content, you'll notice a new option that's there that wasn't there before. That's to publish to your own story or to this collaborative story. Then in those instances, Snapchat somehow curates them. They do go through Snapchat. I think it's more around their liability, not about ethical or legal liability sometimes. And so you can log on and see this hot air balloon. The Chinese New Year was terrific. I got to see it firsthand from 100 different people posting content that was selected that gave me a human's eye view of what it would be like to be there and experience that. That there's no PBS documentary in the world that could have done it the way that that was successful. So now they've got a new breed of these collaborative stories that is called a campus story. And they've created this geographic wall around these campuses. So the only thing that's different now with this kind is that you have to be within that wall to see it or to post to it. So if you're on campus at UF, you can post to the UF story. And if it's selected to be curated, it gets posted, and anyone else who's also on campus can see that story. So unfortunately, Gator fans back in Tampa or Orlando or in Virginia can't log on and see our story. But if you're on campus, you can see what's being posted there. And that created some new questions for us. I mean, what are they going to do when a competitor is on our campus for football season and they're on our campus, you know, interacting? So will they have Florida State University content showing up on our campus story? When freshmen, potential new students are touring with their families, they're on campus. Will anyone who's on campus can see the story. Will they be able to post to our story? We're not sure. And when it had launched without our campus. We were added in a second or third wave, and it brought up some new questions. Luckily, for the first round, I didn't notice anything that affected our facilities at first. But I did see some things that were very honest and humorous, and they're funny, but they were against some campus policies, even as simple as bringing food. There was someone who brought Pita Pit, a local restaurant, into the O-Dome for a basketball game, and it was a very funny, cute video where they pull the Pita Pit out of their jacket, and it says, "Couldn't go to the game without my bae." I thought it was hilarious, but I don't work for the O-Dome, and you're not supposed to have food in the O-Dome. So how do you interact with those types of things? That, you know, there have been some things I've seen happening in our buildings that are not technically policy. People bringing food and drink into the facilities. So we started having a conversation about what we're seeing, not only use of our programs and facilities, but the condition of the student. Where are they studying? What's stressing them out? There's these moments where you see everyone doing different things, and then all of a sudden you see this conglomerate of these moments where all students come together for a concert on campus or homecoming parade or whatever this majors of events are, where you see all the posts start to look the same for a little while. We had a march during Black History Month on our campus, and you saw these great moments where the entire student body kind of merged into these moments together and then go back to their ways of studying and randomness of our independent lives. So it's really kind of exciting for a department like ours in recreational sports and student affairs to talk about if we really want to be part of academic success, and we are now seeing students interacting and studying and the hours they're operating, all kinds of things in a very different live way we didn't have access to before. How can we use that to offer intelligence to our organization, how we shape our future? Additionally, with 700 student staff, we had to have a dialogue about our expectations for customer service. And I had to be very careful. I've offered it to anyone who wants to see a copy of my letter. They can email me, andyh@recsports.ufl.edu. Reach out to me. I'm happy to show it to you. But I didn't want people to go back into their turtle shells and say, well, we're done with Snapchat, because we've had success with it. But there's some new questions about the type of behavior we would not want to see our student employees engaging in. The quintessential restaurant employee who scans around the room and says, I can't wait for the people to leave so I can get off my shift and go home. That's not something that that does not promote our mission of making our environment welcoming, non-intimidating. We're doing our best to get everyone to feel comfortable taking these emotional and personal risks, and we want to make sure that there's no distractions to that at all. And our student staff was very mature. They've been very open to the conversations, but the dialogue has to start somewhere. And so we started that off through the supervisors, all department memo that was sent out, and then me going around department by department talking to students one-on-one to explain how, you know, on the worst end of the stick, you'd have, you know, what if the lifeguard partying the night before and then going the next day and picking up a lifeguarding shift at the pool. So this isn't something that has to do with whether or not your department has an account or not. This has to do with how your employees are representing you, whether or not you have an account. So even if you choose that Snapchats isn't the right thing for your organization, it would behoove you to be there. I mean, you won't have complete knowledge of all the content because some of it might be personal, being sent to specific contents, but others are being posted on this story. We had on campus, there was a valet driver that was selected for the campus story, and the valet driver was riding on the hood of a car that I imagine he was supposed to be valeting.
Oh,
and
no.
so there's been this conversation on campus about wonder what happened to that valet driver who was on the campus story riding on the hood of the car. And so it behooves us all to be present. Yik Yak, you know, there's a lot of things that happen on Yik Yak that will make you. There's not a place sometimes to go for happy, warm fuzzies, but it is there to go for motivation on what we do and what our missions are, and trying to understand that students are facing bullying and there are things out there that are unfortunate, and it's our goal and mission to make sure that we're even more present than ever before to make sure students have a place to be safe. They know we're there to support them and encourage them and open dialogue when necessary. And even just to see simple
Hello?
Hello?
Hey, sorry, I think it froze.
Sure.
I'm not sure if it was my screen or yours. Keep going.
All right. So even on that simple level, I just get like simple intelligence. You know, what is this crazy machine? Like the crank cycle. It's kind of a strange machine. A lot of people don't know how to use it. And if I see that kind of comment coming in, I can say, well, you know, we really probably should do some kind of educational initiative on some of this equipment that people don't understand how to use. And I'm seeing it here on social media. So even for intelligence purposes, I think most departments should consider having some kind of foot in the door.
We shouldn't be walking around with our ears closed of like, oh, I don't want to know what's being said, or I don't want to, even if you're, I think you're exactly right, even if you're not generating content, at least having your, you know, your feelers out there and knowing what's going on. I think that's an extraordinary point. And we're running tight on time, but I have two questions.
Yeah.
One is from Kiana Corley on Twitter. And how effective is Snapchat for small colleges? Max 2,000 students. Any research on it? And I do want to shout out to Kiana. Andy did say that we're looking at 77% of college students. So, I mean, that could potentially be a big audience, right?
Absolutely. Well, and I think it's completely scalable. In some ways, I mean, I'm not a small campus, so I really would encourage you to reach out to someone who is and ask them how it's been working for them. But I see the success as scalable. And in some ways, on a campus with 2,000, how many students did they say there were? 2,000?
2,000.
Yeah, 2,000 students. There's a higher propensity that they know each other and they're in each other's social networks anyway. And so it might even be easier to facilitate those messages with them. And it might be right for some departments and not for others. And sometimes you choose who you could use Snap. I mean, I just throwing this out there. You know, if you decide Snapchat would be for alums or for high school students, like potential admissions projects, then your voice would change around that. So it doesn't have to be for your students. But when you decide who your audience is, what your goals are, how social media is the cart, not the horse. Yeah. So when social media is the cart, following your goals and using the right types of social media and the right types of personality and content to achieve your goals, it would be right for any size campus, whether you have 2,000 students or a class, an academic class of 15 students could effectively use it to communicate.
That's a really good idea. And our last question to follow us up is from Alex. Alex Williams. So does Florida Rec Sports keep their Snapchat use in-house, or do they work with Snapchat, the company, to develop and deliver content?
We do it in-house.
So I love that. And if anyone doesn't follow Andy also on Pinterest, he has some really great design concepts and ideas on there as well.
Thank you.
Andy, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. You've given me so many fantastic ideas. And as always, you can watch more shows from Higher Ed Pros on the Marketing Live archive located on higheredlive.com. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in, and we will see you all next time. Oh, and go Gators.
Go Gators.
Go Gators.
Thanks, Amy.